A bold TV host drops a bombshell live on air, calling out a powerful politician, and it costs him everything. Fired, canceled, and pushed to the edge, Elliott Graves refuses to apologize, and what happens next will blow your mind. Watch how he takes control, builds his own empire, and exposes the truth behind the scenes. You won't believe what happens at the end. Stick around to see how it all goes down. Chapter 1. The moment that changed everything. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Elliott Graves, the unfiltered TV host who had made a name for himself by speaking his mind, was about to take things too far. The cameras were rolling, the studio was packed, and the debate was heating up. But this wasn't just any debate. It was about corporate influence and politics, and sitting across from Elliott was Pam Bondi, a former attorney general with deep ties to some of the most powerful people in the country. Elliott, with his usual cocky grin, stared directly into the camera, knowing the millions of viewers were hanging on every word. The topic had shifted to political corruption, and Bondi, with her polished, corporate-backed smile, was doing everything she could to dodge the questions. Elliott wasn't having any of it. "You know, Pam," Elliott said, leaning forward, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "you've got some serious connections. What's it like, selling your soul to the highest bidder? I'm sure your pals in the big leagues are paying well." The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. The audience sat there, stunned. Pam's face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Her lips trembled slightly, but she forced a smile. "Excuse me," she shot back, her voice a tight whisper. "Did you just call me a whore on live TV?" Elliott didn't flinch. In fact, he leaned in even closer, the intensity in his eyes never breaking. "I didn't say it, Pam, but I'm sure you've figured it out by now. I'm just saying what everyone else is too afraid to say." The studio buzzed with nervous energy. The producers in the back were frantically whispering into their headsets, unsure whether they should cut to a commercial or just let this mess play out. It was clear that Elliott had crossed a line, and he knew it. But there was no going back now. Pam's hands clenched into fists. "You're disgusting, Elliott," she snapped, her voice barely contained. "You've crossed a line, and you're going to regret this." Elliott didn't back down. "Regret? Maybe. But at least I'm not playing the game, Pam. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. And for the record, I think people are finally starting to wake up to what's really going on." The cameras zoomed in on Pam, who was now visibly shaken, but trying to maintain her composure. She shot back with venom. "You're pathetic. You're the one who's going to lose everything for this stunt." The tension in the room was suffocating. Everyone could feel it. Something big was about to happen. And no one, not even Elliott, knew how far this would go. The clip of Elliott's comment exploded online within minutes. Social media erupted. His name was trending, but not in the way he had hoped. People were divided. Some hailed him as a hero for exposing the corruption, while others called him a misogynist and a disgrace. The comment was everywhere. It was like a bomb had gone off, and the fallout was just beginning. Back in the studio, Elliott could feel the weight of the moment. He didn't care. He wasn't going to apologize. Not for this. He knew the consequences, but he also knew something else. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was bigger than any network, bigger than any sponsor. This was about speaking the truth when no one else would. As the debate wound down, Elliott's thoughts raced. He had just made the biggest mistake, or the smartest move of his career. Either way, things were never going to be the same. But one thing was clear, he wasn't about to back down. The world would soon find out just how far Elliott Graves was willing to go. And the network? They were going to have to deal with the storm he had just unleashed. And it was just the beginning. Chapter 2. The internet is on fire, and Elliott's name is everywhere. The moment Elliott's comment hit the airwaves, everything exploded. It wasn't just a firestorm, it was a full-blown inferno. By the time the debate wrapped up, the clip had already gone viral. Social media was buzzing like crazy. Everyone was talking about it. Elliott's name was trending, but not for any of the reasons he'd hoped. From conservatives to liberals, the online reaction was savage. People either loved him or hated him. There was no middle ground. And man, did the world have something to say. Did you hear what Elliott Graves just said? A tweet from a popular conservative influencer read, "This guy is out of control. How does he still have a job?" And just like that, the backlash began. Talk show hosts, pundits, even former politicians weighed in on the controversy. One tweet said, "This is why the media is trash. Elliott Graves is a misogynist who doesn't care about the truth." But then came the other side. The people who saw Elliott's comment for what it was, a truth bomb in a world of lies. Finally, someone says what we're all thinking. A tweet from a political activist read, Pam Bondi has sold her soul to the highest bidder for years. Why is no one calling her out? The debate raged on, and Elliott's comment became the center of it all. The clip was being shared by thousands. Memes were popping up faster than anyone could keep track. Some were funny, others were furious. But the one thing they all had in common was this. They were all talking about Elliott Graves. Back in the studio, things were far from calm. Elliott had just finished the debate, but his mind was spinning. He knew he'd crossed a line. The question was, how far would the fallout reach? He was in his dressing room when his manager, Laura, burst in, face pale with worry. You've done it now, she said, throwing her hands up in the air. The internet is on fire. I don't even know how to handle this. Elliott just leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. What else is new? This is what I do. Laura shook her head. No, Elliott. This isn't just about you anymore. People are calling for your head. The network is freaking out. The phone on his desk buzzed. Elliott picked it up, reading the message from his producer. It was a single line. We need you in the meeting room. Now. Laura's face turned even more serious. They're going to fire you, aren't they? Elliott sighed, sitting forward, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. Maybe. But maybe they don't have the balls to do it. Let's see how this plays out. Just then, his phone buzzed again, this time a text from a former colleague. Dude, you're a hero or a villain, but you're definitely the story right now. The network's shaking in their boots. Elliott grinned. Sounds like a win to me. But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get real ugly. His refusal to apologize was only going to fuel the fire. The truth was out there now, and there was no way to put it back in the bottle. Back at the network headquarters, the execs were in full crisis mode. The phone lines were burning up. Sponsors were calling in, demanding answers. I don't care if he's our biggest star, one of the executives snapped. If he doesn't apologize, we're done. He's done. But there was no apology coming from Elliott. Not now. Not ever. He knew the world was watching, and he wasn't about to back down. As he walked toward the meeting, he could feel the weight of what he'd just done. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was the beginning of something bigger. But would he lose everything for it? Or was this the start of his rise? The next few days were going to be the most intense of his life. And as Elliott prepared for the inevitable showdown with the network, one thing was certain. There was no turning back now. Chapter 3. The network's last warning. Will Elliott back down? The room was cold. Not literally, but the air was thick with tension. Elliott stepped into the conference room, his eyes scanning the faces of the executives who were now locked in a full-blown panic mode. The head honchos had gathered for an emergency meeting. The topic? Him. And more specifically, the aftermath of his explosive comments on live TV. Have a seat, Elliott, said Janet, the network's chief executive. Her tone was icy, her expression hard. She didn't look like she was about to be reasonable. She looked like she was about to drop a bomb. Elliott didn't need an invitation. He sat down in the nearest chair, crossing his arms. So, what's the verdict? You guys gonna fire me, or are we gonna have a real conversation? Janet's eyes narrowed. We've already had that conversation, Elliott. You crossed a line. The backlash has been insane. Advertisers are pulling out. The sponsors are threatening to back out. We are this close to losing everything. Elliott shrugged. I didn't make the world go crazy. I just told the truth. Maybe it's time the truth got a little louder. The room went silent. There was a clear unease in the air, as if everyone was just waiting for someone to say the right words that would make this whole nightmare go away. But no one had the guts to do it. We need to talk about an apology, Janet said, leaning forward. The board thinks you should apologize. They think that if you own up to it, we can salvage this. You'll get another shot at this. Hell, we'll even spin it as you coming to your senses. Elliott snorted. You think I'm gonna grovel for my job? You think I'm gonna play your little game, kiss some ass, and pretend I didn't mean every word I said? Nah, that's not how I roll. The silence in the room was deafening. The executives exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable. Then, one of them spoke up. It was Ben Mathers, a former network exec, who had seen all this coming from a mile away. Listen, Elliott, Ben said, his voice low and cautious. The network isn't playing around here. You've pissed off a lot of people, powerful people. They want you gone. They're looking for an excuse. Elliott's eyes locked onto Ben. So what? You think they're going to just fire me? Like that? He snapped his fingers for effect. They won't. Not without a fight. Elliott, you don't get it, Ben replied, his voice getting more urgent. The board is done. They're about to pull the plug on you. You might think you're invincible, but you're not. Not here. Not with the way this is blowing up. You've given them a reason to let you go. Elliott leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, ignoring the mounting tension. He could feel the pressure mounting, but it didn't scare him. He wasn't the type to bow down. I'm not apologizing, he said again, his voice calm but firm. You want me gone? Fine. But I'm not going to grovel. I'm not going to beg for my job. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. Janet's face flushed with anger. You think this is some kind of game? You think you can just walk away from this? I'm not walking away from anything, Elliott shot back, his tone sharp. I'm just not going to play by your rules anymore. The room was dead silent as the weight of Elliott's words hung in the air. The executives exchanged more looks, their faces tight with frustration. They had pushed him too far, and now they had a choice to make: fire him and risk the public fallout, or give in and let him keep his job. After what felt like an eternity, Janet spoke again, her voice a low growl. You think you're the only one who can speak the truth? We built you, Elliott. We made you who you are. And now, you want to throw it all away for one comment. Elliott stood up, his voice ringing out in the tense room. You didn't make me. I made myself. You just put me on TV. And if that's how you think this works, then you're not the network I thought you were. The silence that followed was suffocating. The executives had no response. They had underestimated Elliott. And now, they were going to have to deal with the consequences of their own failure. Elliott walked out of the room without another word, leaving the executives in stunned silence. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he was certain of one thing. He wasn't backing down. The battle was just beginning. Chapter 4. No apology, Elliott's refusal to back down. Elliott's phone buzzed in his hand as he stood at the window of his apartment, watching the city lights flicker below. He'd been up all night, processing what had happened, but the pressure was only mounting. The message on his screen was from Laura, his manager. They're ready to talk. The network's giving you one last chance to apologize. Do you want to take the call? He let out a long breath, staring at the message for a second too long before typing back. No. Tell them I'm not apologizing. I'm done playing their game. A few moments passed, and then Laura called. Elliott, you're walking a tightrope here. They're giving you an out. They're trying to save your career. If you don't apologize, they'll cut you loose, and you know it. Elliott gripped the phone tightly. I don't need their damn apology. What I need is the truth out there. And I'm not going to backpedal just to save face. If they want to fire me over one comment, then they're not the kind of people I want working with me anyway. Laura was quiet for a moment, then sighed. You're making a huge mistake. This whole thing's getting out of control, and you're playing with fire here. You'll be the one holding the burnt match if you don't apologize. I'm not apologizing, Laura. I've already said my piece. Elliott's voice was firm, but inside, the doubt gnawed at him. This wasn't just about losing his job. It was about the principle. The truth had to be said, even if it cost him everything. Laura, her voice dripping with concern, pressed on. Okay, but what if they fire you? What's your backup plan? You can't live off your reputation forever. I've got a plan, Elliott muttered, walking away from the window, trying to shake off the doubt creeping into his thoughts. The truth will always find a way to win. But I'm not going to apologize. I'd rather burn it all down than sell myself out. Just then, the phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Elliott hesitated for a moment before answering. This is Elliott, he said, trying to mask the tension in his voice. Elliott, it's Janet. The voice on the other end was smooth, almost too smooth, like she was trying to be reasonable. You've made your point. We get it. You're a free spirit, and you don't want to play by the rules. But this is getting out of hand. You need to understand that the network's future is on the line here. Elliott felt a surge of anger rise in his chest, but he held it in. I didn't start this fire. I just said what everyone else was too scared to say. If the network's so fragile that they can't handle a little truth, then maybe they should rethink their whole approach to news. He could almost hear Janet's teeth grinding on the other end of the line. Elliott, you can't just burn bridges with everyone you work with and expect to keep your job. The sponsors are pulling out, and the board is furious. We need you to apologize. It's the only way to save face. Elliott laughed bitterly. Apologize? For what? For calling out a corrupt politician? Sorry, but I'm not going to be the corporate puppet you want me to be. You want me to grovel? It's not going to happen. There was a long silence on the other end. Elliott knew that Janet was trying to figure out how to salvage the situation, but she wasn't going to get what she wanted. Not from him. Look, Elliott, Janet said finally, her tone cold. This is your last chance. Apologize, and you get to keep your job. Don't, and we'll have no choice but to cut ties. You'll be out of a job, and everything you've built will be gone. Elliott felt the weight of her words, but he didn't let it show. I don't need your pity offer. I'm not going to bow down to you or anyone else. This is who I am, and if the network can't handle that, then it's their loss. He ended the call without waiting for a response, throwing his phone down onto the couch with a snap. His heart was pounding. There it was, the moment of truth. He had two choices: play it safe and apologize, or double down and risk everything. The weight of the decision hung heavy over him, but as he looked out the window at the skyline, he felt a sense of calm settle in. He knew what he had to do. He wasn't going to apologize. Chapter 5, The Devil's Deal. Will Elliott sell out to save himself? Elliott sat at his desk, staring at his phone like it was a ticking time bomb. The message from Laura still burned in his mind. Ben Mathers wants to talk. He says it's urgent. Elliott hadn't heard from Ben in years. The guy was a former network exec, one of those people who'd seen it all and often from the sidelines. He was the type to play the game from behind the curtain, making moves while everyone else was caught in the spotlight. Ben was smart, and Elliott had always respected him, but now he had a feeling this conversation wasn't going to be about old times. He hesitated for a moment, then dialed Ben's number. Elliott, Ben said on the other end, his voice calm but with an underlying tension. Glad you picked up. I don't know how much time we've got. What's going on, Ben? Elliott's gut twisted. He could already hear the urgency in Ben's voice. You know something I don't? Ben let out a long sigh. You're in deep, man. The network's pissed. The board's done with you. They're looking for any excuse to fire you. And if they don't find one, they'll make one. Elliott felt his pulse race. What does that mean? They can't just toss me out without reason. I've got a contract. It's not that simple, Ben shot back, his voice sharper now. The sponsors are pulling out. The viewers are split down the middle. Some love you. Others think you're a walking disaster. The network can't afford to keep you around if this thing keeps going south. The board doesn't care about ratings if it's costing them money. Elliott's grip tightened on his phone. He wasn't used to this kind of pressure. But Ben wasn't done. They want you to apologize, Elliott, Ben continued. One simple apology, and you can save your job. They're offering you a deal. An apology? Elliott's voice was incredulous. You know I'm not apologizing. Not for speaking the truth. If that's what they want, they can forget it. Ben was silent for a moment. Then, his voice dropped to a near whisper. Elliott, I get it. But here's the thing. You're not going to win this fight. You're going to get burned if you keep this up. The network's looking for any excuse to cut you loose, and you don't have the leverage you think you do. Elliott stood up, pacing around the room. His mind was racing. So, what am I supposed to do, Ben? Bend over and apologize just to keep my job? You're asking me to sell out. I'm not asking you to sell out, Ben said, his tone turning more sympathetic. I'm telling you that the fight's bigger than you. You think you're making some stand, but all you're doing is throwing away everything you've worked for. The truth? It's not going to keep the lights on. Money does. Elliott clenched his fists, feeling the heat of anger rise in his chest. So that's it? I should just lay down and let them walk all over me? That's your advice. It's not about laying down, Elliott. It's about surviving, Ben replied, his voice tight with frustration. You've built this thing from the ground up, but the system's too powerful. You can't win this alone. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything Elliott had worked for. He thought about the hours spent building his career, the risks he'd taken, the sacrifices. And now, it felt like it was all slipping through his fingers. But deep down, Elliott knew one thing. He wasn't going to let it in like this. I'm not apologizing, he said, his voice resolute. I'd rather burn it all down than let them control me. Ben's voice softened. I get it. You've got pride. But there's no shame in backing down when you've got everything to lose. If you want to keep your job, if you want to save your career, apologize. Just do it, Elliott. Elliott's hand tightened on his phone as he turned away from the window, staring out at the night sky. The decision loomed before him, and it felt like he was at the edge of a cliff, ready to either fall or take flight. Thanks for the advice, Ben. But I'm not doing it. Not now. Not ever, Elliott said, hanging up before Ben could respond. The weight of his choice was settling in. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about his integrity. It was about staying true to who he was, no matter the cost. He wasn't going to sell out. He couldn't. Not for anyone. Chapter 6. Going Rogue. Elliott's Break from the System. Elliott stood in front of his laptop, the screen reflecting his face, a mix of determination and exhaustion. The network had tried to break him, but they had underestimated his resolve. He wasn't going to play their game. He wasn't going to apologize, and he wasn't going to back down. They could try to cancel him, but they hadn't figured out the one thing they were missing: his next move. The phone rang. It was Laura. He hesitated, knowing what she was going to say. "Elliott, it's over. They're cutting ties with you. The press release is going out today. You're officially done at the network," Laura said, her voice tinged with concern, though she knew he wasn't going to take this news well. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of her words sinking in. It wasn't a surprise. He knew it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. "You know what, Laura? I don't care." "What do you mean you don't care? You've built your whole career with them. You can't just throw it all away," she fired back. Elliott sighed. "They never built me, Laura. I did this on my own. They just gave me the platform. And now I'm done with it." "You're talking crazy," Laura said, her voice sharp. "You're burning everything to the ground. What's your plan?" He paused, looking at the empty studio space in his apartment, the place that had been both his sanctuary and his prison. "I've got a plan. I'm going rogue." Laura was quiet for a moment. "You're seriously going to do this? You're going to leave everything behind and do it alone? You know how hard it is out there. You'll be starting from scratch." Elliott stood up, his resolve hardening. "Yeah, but at least I'll be free. I'll finally have control. I won't have to answer to anyone. And that's worth more than any paycheck." Laura sighed again, the worry in her voice growing. "You're not thinking straight, Elliott. You're about to lose everything. No sponsors. No security. No backing. You're taking a huge risk here." He looked out the window at the city below. "I've always taken risks, Laura. It's what's got me here in the first place. And I'm not about to play it safe now." The decision was made. Elliott wasn't going to play by the rules anymore. The world had seen the version of him they wanted to see, a puppet for the network's agenda. But now it was his turn. His voice. His platform. His way. "I'm launching my own channel. I'm done with them. No more playing nice. If the world's going to see the truth, I'm going to make sure they hear it from me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You're serious about this?" Elliott smiled, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. "Dead serious. I'm taking control of my voice. And if people want the truth, they'll come to me. I'll give them something they've never had before: freedom." "I hope you know what you're doing," Laura said, her tone softening. She knew there was no stopping him now. The fire in Elliott's eyes told her everything. He wasn't going to back down. He was going to burn it all down and rebuild it from the ground up. "I know," Elliott said with a confidence he hadn't felt in a long time. "It's my turn now." Elliott hung up and sat down at his desk, his mind already racing with ideas. He was done with the network's lies. Done with the corporate agendas. He was about to create something new, something real. He wasn't just going to fight for his career anymore. He was going to fight for his voice, his freedom, and everything that came with it. The world wasn't ready for what was coming next. He wasn't going to just be another talking head. He was going to be the one who controlled the narrative. And with that thought, Elliott made a decision that would change everything. He pulled up his social media accounts and started typing. "Time to make my own way. I'm done with the puppet show. Let's do this." He had sinned. The revolution had begun. Chapter 7. Rising from the Ashes, Elliott's Independent Empire. The first stream was a gamble. Elliott knew that. But he didn't care. The cameras clicked on, and the screen flashed to life. The countdown clock ticked down to 0, and the chat exploded as soon as he appeared. Thousands of people, hungry for truth, flooded in. He wasn't just another talking head on a corporate-owned network anymore. This was his show now. "All right, folks," Elliott said, grinning into the camera. "Welcome to my world. No corporate overlords, no sponsors pulling the strings. Just me and you. Let's talk about what's really going on." The chat was already on fire. People were throwing in comments faster than he could read them. "Elliott, you're a legend. Finally, someone who's not afraid to tell the truth," one comment read. "This is what real news looks like. No BS, no sugarcoating," said another. He leaned forward, eyes glinting with excitement. This was it. The moment he'd been waiting for. No network could hold him back anymore. Elliott spent the next few hours ripping into the system, talking about everything he'd been forced to hold back during his time at the network. Corruption, corporate influence, the lies they sold to the public, all of it was now on the table. "You want to know why I got kicked off TV? It's because I spoke the truth," he said, shaking his head with a wry smile. They couldn't handle that. The sponsors, the board, they don't want you to know what's really going on behind the scenes. But guess what? I'm giving it to you straight. The viewers were eating it up. The subscriber count skyrocketed. By the end of the stream, Elliott had gained over 1 million new followers. People were sharing his video like wildfire. It wasn't just a stream, it was a movement. The next morning, Elliott's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, emails, notifications, it was all coming in at once. He had become a force to be reckoned with. Laura, still in disbelief, was the first to text him. "You did it. This is bigger than I thought. You've got a real shot here." Elliott smiled and texted back. "Told you. No looking back now." But even as the momentum surged, Elliott couldn't ignore the reality of what was happening. He was an independent voice now. The system he'd spent years working under had tried to crush him, and instead, he'd flipped the script. But the higher he climbed, the more he knew the risks. The network would be coming after him. The advertisers would start to feel the heat. There was no going back to the way things were. But that didn't matter. Elliott wasn't about to let the people down now. They had put their faith in him, and he wasn't going to let them down. The first few days were a blur. More streams, more posts, more content. Elliott was on a roll, and the world was watching. He built his brand from the ground up, every move calculated, every piece of content designed to pull people in. One of his streams went viral for a different reason. Elliott had been ranting about corporate greed when he spotted a comment in the chat. "Man, you're like the modern-day Robin Hood," the comment read. The words hit him like a jolt. He paused, reading it again. Robin Hood. It felt strange, but in that moment, something clicked. He wasn't just fighting for his voice anymore. He was fighting for all the people who had been silenced, for everyone who had been ignored by the powers that be. Maybe there was more to this than he had originally thought. The next day, Elliott sat down for another stream, but this one had a different tone. He wasn't just riling people up anymore. He was starting to channel something bigger, something that connected him to every person who'd ever felt like the system was against them. "Listen up," he said, leaning into the camera. "This isn't just about me anymore. This is about all of us. The people who've been ignored. The ones who've been silenced. The ones who are sick and tired of the same old game. If you're ready to fight for what's real, then we're in this together." The chat exploded. People were sharing their own stories, talking about how Elliott's message had resonated with them. He had become more than just a broadcaster. He had become a symbol of resistance against a system that had tried to crush him. The momentum was unstoppable now. Elliott wasn't just a guy who spoke out against the system. He was the face of a movement. And no one, not even the network that had tried to shut him down, could take that away from him. The rise of Elliott Graves had begun, and the world was watching. Chapter 8. The Final Word, Elliott's Truth Bomb That Shook the System. Elliott sat in his new studio, the glow of multiple screens lighting up his face. His channel had exploded, and with every stream, he had only gained more followers. People were tuning in from all over, eager to hear what he had to say next. He wasn't just an independent broadcaster anymore. He was a force, and the world was watching. But even as he basked in his success, something gnawed at him. The network, the board, the powerful figures he had taken down, none of them had forgotten about him. They were still out there, waiting for him to slip up. Elliott had never been one to back down, but he knew the risks. His freedom had come at a cost. The question now was, how much longer could he keep this up? His phone buzzed. It was a message from Laura. "They're coming for you. You know they're not going to let you get away with this. The network is planning a counterattack. You need to be ready." He read it twice. Of course, he knew this was coming. They couldn't just let him run wild. The big players weren't going to sit back and let a former star rise to power without a fight. But Elliott wasn't scared. He had already made his stand. And now, he was about to make his final move. His eyes shifted to the camera, and he tapped the screen to go live. This stream would be different. It wasn't just another rant. It was the culmination of everything he'd been building. "All right, let's talk," Elliott said into the mic, his voice calm but heavy with purpose. "I've spent a lot of time telling you about the system, about the corruption, about the lies. But let me tell you something, the system doesn't just collapse because we want it to. It takes more than that. It takes us. All of us." The chat exploded. People were eager, on the edge of their seats, ready for the next revelation. Elliott could feel the tension. He wasn't just talking to the people anymore. He was talking to the ones who had tried to silence him, the ones who wanted to control the truth. And this time, he wasn't pulling any punches. "You think I'm some renegade? Some lone wolf out here to destroy the system?" Elliott continued. No, I'm part of something bigger now. This isn't just about me. It's about all the people they've silenced for years. The ones they've fed lies to, the ones who've been forced to accept the narrative. It's time to take the narrative back. He leaned forward, his face coming closer to the camera, his eyes intense. And let me make this clear, they want to shut me down. They want to make sure no one else ever dares to stand up. But they made a huge mistake by thinking I'd quit. I'm just getting started. The chat was moving at a mile a minute. Messages flooded in faster than he could read them. Some were supportive, others calling him crazy, but all of them were glued to what he was saying. Elliott had become more than just a voice. He had become the spark that lit the fire, and now people were rising with him. The network will try to bury me. They'll try to twist everything I've said, make me out to be the villain, Elliott went on, his voice steady. But I'm not the villain. I'm the one who's finally telling you what they've been hiding. The truth is, the system isn't built for the people. It's built for the rich, the powerful, the ones who control everything. And they're terrified of what happens when people start waking up. A flood of comments poured in, the energy building with every second. People were rallying to his cause. They were hearing the truth, and they were ready to fight for it. Elliott wasn't just a broadcaster now. He was a symbol, a leader. He was the voice for those who had been silenced for too long. But as the chat grew louder, Elliott knew the danger was escalating. The network would be coming for him. The sponsors, the advertisers, all the people he'd pissed off, none of them were going to let him get away with this. They would try everything to shut him down. But Elliott wasn't scared. He wasn't going to stop. He took a deep breath, leaning back in his chair. This is it. The final word. They want to control the narrative? Too bad. The people already know the truth. And we're not backing down. With that, he clicked the in-stream button. The chat exploded with messages of support. People were excited, fired up, ready for whatever came next. Elliott had just made his stand, and there was no turning back. As he sat there, looking at the screen full of comments, one thing became clear. The network might try to bury him. The board might send their best people after him. But the truth was out now, and the world wasn't going to forget it. Elliott Graves had said his piece, and now he was unstoppable. The final showdown, Elliott's last stand against the system. Elliott Graves went from being a network star to a symbol of defiance. He fought back against the powers that tried to silence him, but the system doesn't go down without a fight. As the network closes in and the stakes get higher, one thing is clear. Elliott isn't backing down. He's already made his stand, and the truth is out there, no matter the cost. But can he survive the storm he's unleashed? Or will the system crush him for good? This is just the beginning of the fight. The real war is yet to come. If you want to see how it all unfolds, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and don't forget to ring the bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. Stay tuned.